Hello and welcome to another edition of Faultlines on NDTV World. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. This is a show that gets you all the details and decodes the truth behind the headlines and beyond the divide. Today, far from peace, the Russia-Ukraine war has entered a dangerous new territory. We decode how far are we from peace? What does this new dangerous territory entail? Will that mean that Trump's chances of saying a 24-hour peace deal now looks even more unlikely than ever before? And with a defiant Putin, where is the world headed? Next, we are going to decode the US-Iran talks on nuclear. There have been progress, but incremental. Both sides are being defiant. What does that mean? How does that reshape the Middle East? Will that impact the traditional Shia-Sunni fault lines in the region? We decode all that for you. But first up, our top story. All right, as I said, the first story that we are now looking at, an emboldened Russia, a frustrated Washington. Europe and Ukraine left sidelined, with roadmap towards peace looking nowhere in sight. The Russia-Ukraine war seems to be back to its early stages, and viewers, that's extremely disturbing, simply because we seem to be farther and farther away from where exactly is that peace talk, peace negotiation, peace settlement really looking at. And why do we say that? Why is it that there is some sense of similarity? Well, the Russian aerial assault is back, and it's back on Kyiv and several other prominent Ukrainian cities. They have happened leading into a new phase of war, and that new phase includes Ukraine now being in a position to strike deep inside Russian territory. That means that Ukraine enters Russia. And will that mean Russia hitting back and NATO responding? No one knows, because those weapons that Ukraine is being armed with are NATO weapons. And this report tells you in greater detail exactly what all is happening that could change the way Russia-Ukraine war is going from here on. Take a look.
Amid stalled ceasefire talks, the Russia-Ukraine war has entered a dangerous new phase, as the largest aerial attack in the war took place on Sunday. A barrage of 400 drones and missiles struck capital Kyiv, 30 other cities and a dozen airports. Kremlin claimed the aerial attacks were in response to Ukraine's persistent attacks on Russian infrastructure. This has dashed all hopes for peace or any roadmap towards it. Three years into the war, Europe has shrugged off its hesitation to strike deep inside Russian territory, empowering Ukraine by lifting restrictions on weapons supplied to the country. By all means, a strike in the heart of Russia will most certainly start a chain reaction of a much bigger response from Moscow. Roughly 398 drones and 69 missiles rained down on Ukraine on Sunday, including Iranian-designed Shahed drones, killing at least 12 and injuring dozens. Putin's desire for comprehensive military victory has alienated the Trump administration, which is both wary and frustrated, and the war of words between Washington and Moscow is the testimony to fading possibilities of a US-brokered peace formula.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin.
Действительно признательны американцам и лично президенту Трампа за содействие в организации и в запуске этого переговорного процесса. И это очень важное достижение. Конечно, одновременно с этим это очень ответственный момент, который связан, конечно, с эмоциональной перегрузкой всех абсолютно и с эмоциональными реакциями. Вот. Мы внимательно отслеживаем всю реакцию. Вместе с тем.
With Trump's playbook only having sanctions as recourse, peace prospects are getting dimmer. More so since Moscow's well-oiled war economy is now working efficiently for Kremlin's primary economic objective. This explains why the threat of sanctions has not deterred Putin from continuing his aerial assault on Ukraine. Trump's flip-flopping foreign policy and his love-hate relationship with Putin has meant that his 24-hour commitment to end the war looks like one of his many empty promises.
This report told you exactly where in the stage of war is the world right now in. The Russia-Ukraine war has been going on for 3 years, viewers. But the stage at which it is right now, it seems that it's probably in the early stages of war where it seemed there's absolutely no way that this could end. And that's a very disturbing fact of this. And the war of words between Trump and Putin indicates that there is no peace deal on the table. And for all practical purposes, there is no Zelensky at all in any possible peace formula. I'm going to put that out. Some of the comments that have come in from both sides that explain the frustration and also explain the limited, very limited scope of any reconciliation that may exist as far as Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. Let's put that out. First up, let's get in what Trump said. He actually said, Vladimir, stop. That's what he said. He's frustrated. This is the view of the American administration that wanted to end this in 24 hours. Well, it's the longest 24 hours in the world's history, isn't it? And look at the response. Russia intensified the strikes on Ukraine. So that's the word of, well, the leader of the free world. He's asking Putin to stop, but he isn't stopping. He is intensifying. Let's go ahead. Let's see what else is the latest as far as the powerless Trump versus defiant Putin saga that's playing out on the battlefield in Ukraine. He's in fact threatened Russia with more sanctions. But what has happened? He has stalled through talks and he skipped the Istanbul beach, the closest that the world came to getting the two sides on the table to be able to thrash out some sort of a peace negotiation. And why is it that Putin is defiant on any sanctions? Because Moscow is now a war economy. It's adjusted to being a war economy. So there's only so much that American sanctions can impact, which is why the response, as you can see, has been that Putin has been extremely defiant. Let's go ahead. The other aspect, there was a 24-hour deadline that was given to end the war, all but forgotten. Up in the air, isn't it? Because Moscow then moves to prolong the war. It's another phase that you actually enter when you strike deep inside Ukraine's cities, key cities, with massive aerial assaults. You're indicating that this is in for the long haul. How long? No one knows, because we're already 3 years and counting. Next up, let's get in some of the other. Then there was also tough talk, no action. Well, it's emboldened Putin, and he's making those bold demands. What are those bold demands? No ceasefire when we sit on the table. No Zelensky when we sit on the table. And lastly, let's talk big picture. Let's include everything related to Russia and US, not just limit this to a war. That's what his bold demands are. Some of it President Trump gave into, but his frustration is what we put out in some of those comments on that we displayed for you. Well, viewers, at the end of the day, how this is turning out, well, as far as if you take out the blinkers and understand what the situation is looking like right now, this war, unfortunately, is no closer to peace than it was on day one when it started, when those heavy tanks and those heavy artillery were unleashed by Russia. Demands remain the same. Efforts, unfortunately, have led to diminishing and, at this stage, very little results and returns. It's not headed for peace anytime soon. There are reasons for it. No one wants to end this war. And I say this with responsibility because there are no incentives to end this war. Is Putin better off with an ongoing war? I just told you. Look at the commentary that's coming in. The President of the United States, leader of the free world as he's termed, is giving ultimatums which are being brushed aside by Russia because there is no incentive to end the war. One can say sanctions can be slapped, but they've already been slapped. They're maxed out, one would say, having no impact or limited impact to an economy that has now adjusted to a war machinery. What are the options on the table right now? Limited, if at all any. At the end of the day, if there is no ceasefire, if there is no incentive for the two sides to sit on the table, we'll unfortunately have another edition of Fault Line where we'll talk about yet another fault line that exists, why this war is going on. It's been 3 years and counting, and at this stage, people on the battlefield are the ones who are the biggest victims, with the war of words continuing with no possibility or opportunity for any peace formula to be thrashed out. Well, viewers, on that note, we slip into a short break. We come back on the other side, decode yet another fault line, this time the one that runs deep inside the Middle East regarding Iran's nuclear arsenal. Stay with us. are now on to a hot button issue with complexities galore. Iran's nuclear program. There have been 4 rounds of talks. And since then, US and Iran, they've made some very incremental progress. Of course, not conclusive by a stretch. As far as a nuclear deal is concerned, it looks farther than ever before. Trump seeks complete nuclear disarmament. Iran believes that there's elbow room. It downplays Washington's threats, saying Iran will survive. Deal or not, now you should keep. Now, why is it that we should be caring about the Iran deal? Why is it that it matters to the world? Well, how does it impact global stability is the most important part. And I'm going to explain to our viewers exactly why is it that Iran's nuclear arsenal, if at all it happens, why it impacts everybody. And this is the region where Iran's writ plays large. And there is, of course, this axis of organizations, terror organizations, leading all the way back to a country that doesn't have a nuclear arsenal right now, but is working towards it. There is Lebanon. In Lebanon, there is Hezbollah. Then, of course, there is Hamas. There is Iraq's Kataib Hezbollah. Of course, in Yemen, there are the Houthi rebels. They are the ones who've been firing those long-range missiles that impact the entire Red Sea. Next, in Palestinian territories, of course, there is Hamas, and in Syria, then there is the other as well. Then there is one in Bahrain as well that is there. This is the entire nexus of organizations, of outfits that go back to the axis that leads to Iran, a country that still doesn't have, as I said, a nuclear weapon. But imagine how this will reshape if it does have a nuclear weapon, if it does have a nuclear arsenal that can have more than just civilian purposes. And that's the reason why we need to care about this. That's the reason why we need to know which way the world and the world's peace negotiations, peace ambitions are going as far as the nuclear arsenal of a potential nuclear arsenal of Iran is concerned. And what's the story right now? This report brings us up to speed with exactly what is happening as far as Iran-US talks are concerned. Take a look.
Iran's nuclear program has long been a critical fault line in the Middle East, a symbol of national pride for Tehran, while a source of anxiety for the West. Since the early days of its nuclear program, Iran has insisted that its nuclear ambitions remain focused on civilian purposes, aimed at energy production and medical research, and not nuclear weapons. Yet, suspicions run deep. From the US to the global nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency skeptical of Tehran's true intentions after Iran's secret nuclear enrichment facilities were exposed in 2002, breaking the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and eroding global trust. Today, Iran reportedly possesses over 275 kgs of uranium, enriched to 60%. That's dangerously close to the 90% threshold needed for a nuclear weapon. The world has tried to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions over the past 50 years, the most significant example being the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, signed between Iran and the P5+1 countries, including the US, Russia, China, among others. That deal puts strict limits on Iran's uranium enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief.
از امروز دیگر برنامه هسته‌ای ایران با بهانه‌های واهی به عنوان تهدید صلح و امنیت برای جهان و برای منطقه نیست، بلکه برنامه هسته‌ای وسیله‌ای برای فناوری نوین در مسیر توسعه کشور و ثبات و امنیت منطقه خواهد بود.
Yet in a move that upended the Middle East forever, Donald Trump unilaterally exited the deal in 2018, reinstating US sanctions on Tehran, leaving Iran to expand its nuclear infrastructure in retaliation. The sticking point remains Iran sees uranium enrichment as a sovereign right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, while the West fears a nuclear-armed Tehran is a threat to global stability, while Israel sees Iran and its nuclear program as an existential threat given their contentious history. While indirect talks between US and Iranian officials are ongoing, with both sides signaling that a deal is close, the stakes could not be higher. Beyond the geopolitical chessboard, a collapsed deal could mean higher oil prices, regional instability, and a renewed nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Washington demands a complete disarmament of Iran's nuclear program. Tehran seeks a fair and honorable agreement that allows limited nuclear activity in exchange for sanctions relief. Only time will tell whether diplomacy will be able to diffuse one of the most dangerous flashpoints in global geopolitics. With Disha Bagchi, Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.
So we put the context for you. We've explained to you why exactly Iran's nuclear pile, possible nuclear pile, and talks with US are of such importance to the world. We told you the fact, what happens, how the region will change, if at all, Iran does get the nuclear arsenal. What is the status of the talks? We told all of you. Now we're going to come to the fault line that exists in this entire possibilities that this entire issue raises. Let's put that out. First fault line that we are exposing as far as one within Iran. You have the two blocks in Iran, one reformists. In fact, the present president has come on a reformist agenda. He puts those creds out there for everyone to see. But does that clash completely with the supreme leader? Remember, he is the big boss in Iran, the final word. He feels that US is an untrustworthy adversary. And in fact, that has been the bedrock of the US-Iranian relationship. In contrast, Pezeshkian thinks that at some point of time, we've got to talk simply because we've got the American sanctions to be lifted. And the only way for that is that there is progress on those talks. So that's the first fault line. Which way the political thought process in Iran is going to go is going to be extremely important to decide whether or not these talks progress. Next up, then the second fault line that exists right now, this is within Iran itself, that there is such division as far as the thought process is concerned. Now let's talk about the division of thought in the P5 club. P5, the big five club, the big boys club who essentially decide everything that matters in the world. One can dispute how effective their writ really is, but the fact is they are the ones who are largely the decision-making bodies, for want of a better word. There is a division as well. You have Russia and China on one side. They support Iran and they oppose sanctions. It has nothing to do with Iran. It has everything to do with America. The three of them, that is Russia, China, Iran, now form a very close coterie of an anti-American bloc. They've been doing military exercises together, whether it's in the Black Sea or whether it's in other parts of the world. They've been conducting regular military exercises. There have been exchanges of economic possibilities as well, all with a very clear view that it is an anti-America bloc. On the other side, of course, is where you have US and Europe. Europe remains neutral, another big fault line, because at the end of the day, it's, as I said, it's America versus an anti-America bloc. The third and the final fault line that we are putting out is that as far as Iran is concerned, yes, US seeks nuclear disarmament and it wants these talks to move ahead. And as far as Russia and China are concerned, well, they've been providing financial support to Iran to essentially ensure that they prop up the regime as long as they can and it can withstand the sanctions. That's the second part. Now let's get into the other fault line that we are talking about. Iran says that it cannot trust the US to honor deals. And at the other end, you have US saying that Iran could continue uranium enrichment, something that it has huge ramifications. And lastly, Iran wants the talks to be limited to just nuclear issues. They want that, you know what, we're going to be putting out a nuclear enrichment program. We're only going to talk about that, nothing else, because we're only doing it for civilian purposes, something that America doesn't agree. They say that you've got to bring the elephant in the room. That is that, are you going to create some sort of a ballistic missile and disrupt the whole region? That is another fault line, another premise on which there are deep divisions and why there is very little progress that is being made on this issue. This is exactly what the crux of the entire matter is concerned, viewers. Which brings me, in fact, now to talk about the final point as far as this issue is concerned, that is blinkers off. Well, viewers, US and Iran have held talks. They've made partial progress in the past, and then all of it was rolled back. An interim pact was signed in 2013. There was a Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, that was signed in 2015, only for it to all be rolled back. in search of a better deal under Trump's earlier administration. But there are chances that Iran is now closer to a nuclear bomb than ever before. So there goes your best deal on the table, doesn't it? In Trump's eternal hunt for the best possible deal, there are multiple fault lines that are now coming to fore. If Iran continues its nuclear enrichment, the entire Middle East could flare up. Why? Because Iran does not recognize Israel, and the latter faces an existential threat for Iran. We played out that axis of terror outfits that lead all the way to Tehran, didn't we? That is an axis that exists without a nuclear arsenal. If it does, well, Middle East could really do flare up. Add to it the fact that if talks fail, the Iran-Saudi Arabia relationship will undergo a major change. There will be some sort of a greater rapprochement that will take place between the two sides. The 2019 Houthi attack on Aramco was largely left unaddressed by Washington during Trump's earlier tenure. It made Riyadh realize that it is strategically more advantageous to have better ties with Tehran, a Shia-Sunni fault line that has for long defined and shaped the region. It could be reshaped once again if these talks fail. Well, viewers, on that note, we come to an end of this edition of Fault Lines. We're going to come back, expose more divides, greater divisions around the world. Till then, thanks so much for watching.